Welcome to the Sip and Scale podcast, where we talk about everything business, entrepreneurship, and startups. My name is Blendi Muriqi. I'm the CEO and founder of Delegate.co. Each week, you'll join us as we talk with industry experts and business owners, sharing actionable insights to drive your business forward. So grab your favorite beverage and let's sip our way to success. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sip and Scale podcast. Today, I'm excited to welcome an exceptional entrepreneur, Aviv Shalgi, founder of Solar Simplified, who has co-founded and built 3 successful startups, leading to 2 acquisitions and even an IPO. Now, he's working on his new venture aiming to revolutionize renewable energy distribution. With over a decade of experience as a board member, mentor, and advisor, he's been a key player in M&A, venture investments, corporate strategy, and earning multiple innovation awards along the way. His expertise spans AI, machine learning, solar energy, and space technology, making him a visionary in both tech and renewable energy. We're honored to have him here today, and we look forward to having a really productive conversation. Welcome to the Sip and Scale podcast, Aviv.
Thanks for having me, Blendi. Happy to be here.
First, I want the viewers to understand, what is Solar Simplified? And then we'll go into, your entrepreneurial roots.
Sure. So Solar Simplified, we started the company about 4.5 years ago with the idea that most renewable energy, and especially solar energy, is right now blocked from the majority of the American population. Only about 20% of Americans can actually put solar panels on their roof because people are renting, people can't afford it, maybe they can't finance it because their credit score is too low, they live in a shaded area, their roof is too old. There's more than a dozen different reasons why people, especially in the US, can't put solar panels. Maybe just live in a high rise. In a condo. And while the entire, call it solar industry, when it comes to marketing and what goes out, to the general public, it's mostly known for rooftop solar. Pay $20,000, $50,000, put a bunch of solar panels on your roof, and that is your access to the world of solar energy. We came at it from a different direction, basically saying, how is it possible that the entire, national conversation is around something that only fits maybe 15 to 20% of the population? What about everybody else? All of the other 80% who again are renting or for various reasons can't put solar panels on the roof? Are they completely blocked from this industry? This just kind of seems insane.
Yeah.
And so we came up with, with Solar Simplified, where the goal of what we do, we partner with companies that build solar power plants. That's not on your house. That's somewhere else, usually on rooftops of kind of commercial buildings, warehouses, things of that nature. Or it could be ground mount, put parking canopies above parking lots, or, landfill, what some people call garbage mountains, and things of that nature, places where nothing else is going to get built, basically. And let's put a bunch of solar panels on it. And we're talking tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of panels, not like 20 panels on your roof type of scale. And virtually subscribe the energy from those panels to consumers. The way that it actually works is you get a coupon on your bill. Every kilowatt hour, every dollar that we can produce from our panels, if you're a subscriber, in an area where we generate that energy. So you have to live fairly close, call it a couple 100 miles away at most from the power plant. Every dollar that we can produce on your behalf, you're going to get 10 cents off on your bill. And it doesn't matter, it's not that you're buying the energy for a lower price or something like that. It's literally a coupon. You saved 10% off of X amount of money. That X is just dependent on how much sun was shining on the panels that you're subscribed to.
What's the barrier? Okay, I have so many questions. For one,
feel free to
I'm
shoot
sure
it away.
Right now there's a B2C model for a business like this. It's like, I have friends that are in the solar space and they run a B2C solar company where they go door to door and sell what you were talking about, the $30,000 to $50,000 package.
Right.
What you're doing is it's a more B2B play in the sense that you are working with warehouses, you're working with probably real estate companies, I'm assuming.
No, we only work with the folks who build the power plants, own those properties. So
Gotcha.
we don't actually build the solar, we don't install it, we don't go and convince the landowners or the building owners to let us do it there. There are companies who specialize in those types of stuff,
Yeah.
but instead of selling the system, if I
Yeah.
compare it to the rooftop that you were mentioning, instead of selling it, let's say if it's a rooftop for a warehouse for $5 million, if it's 100 times bigger than your house, call it, instead they will flip it. They'll just pay a lease,
Yeah.
for the roof, or they'll buy the roof rights from you,
Yeah.
put the solar panels on top. You get a little bit of extra money as the building owner, but now they own the system and they allow us to again bring subscribers, multiple subscribers that don't have solar panels on their roof, to sign up for this. They get the benefit of the energy, they get the benefit of the savings. They feel good that they support local economy, creation of more jobs, greener energy, which means actually less pollution, because again, you have to live fairly close to where these solar panels are built. You can't put them in Texas while you're living in New York. That's not going to work, you know. Um,
What's the
but it's
barrier
just a
of
way to
entry?
flip the model on its head. Instead of somebody paying a whole lot of money to build this for
Yeah.
self-use,
Yeah.
let's have kind of think about it like a bank or a financial company putting up a mortgage, because they know there's a revenue stream that could cover that mortgage and create some extra value for everybody.
What's the barrier? Because these power plants, in a sense, it's an asset light business model for you guys, because what you're doing is you're connecting those solar plants to the customers. So if
Correct.
anything, it's like there's a marketing and there's a sales play to it. It's convincing people of the value of using these um or partnering with these solar farms. Now,
Correct.
but on the other side of it, there's also this barrier of entry for these companies to get into different types of markets. So if anything, like you're somewhat constrained by geography, right? As you continue to scale, and you're constrained by the companies that are in specific markets.
I would say yes and no. Theoretically, you could be right. There's about 1,000 companies in the United States right now that build these types of power plants.
Gotcha.
And so there's no shortage, and each one builds more than one power plant per year. There are folks who build, call it 2, 3, 4, 5 power plants a year. There's folks that build hundreds of these a year.
Mm,
And so the problem is not necessarily the problem of scale, in the fact that the market is very, very small, and so how do we capture it? The market here is huge. I have no problem of, continuing to grow, because I'm going to get stuck in a ceiling. The ceiling is really far. Like, I'll be, making $1 trillion a year before I hit that ceiling. So,
yeah.
it's I'm not worried about the ceiling. I think that the barriers that you were kind of talking about, or the challenges, are more on the kind of, I'll call it, two sides. On the B2B side, it's convincing those companies that they should not sell, that energy at wholesale markets, which are significantly lower, revenue to what it is that we do, and that there is a different opportunity. They could make more money if they work with us. And on the flip side, it's convincing consumers that this is not a scam, because it's really not. It's really savings. The reason why we can allow people to save is because of that arbitrage in how much money those companies would make on selling the same electrons. It's just selling it to different players. If they would sell it to, we'll call it, a Fortune 100 company, they would get, maybe 40 cents on the dollar. If
Yeah.
they would call it on the retail dollar,
Yeah.
but if they sell it, maybe less, but if they sell it through us to a consumer, and it's not one consumer, it's it's like a group of consumers, call it 500 or 1,000 consumers at a time. What they will say is, okay, we don't have to sell it at a dollar for at a dollar value. We can sell it for 80 cents on the dollar or 90 cents on the dollar. The consumer saves that margin, maybe 10 or 20% of the value. They just doubled up their revenue. They're very happy to do that, and kind of pay me a small fee from that upside to actually help them facilitate it. So they're happy to give out the discounts, but convincing people that we're not actually selling a dollar for 90 cents and we're all just bleeding money, but that there's an actual value creation here, that is, I would say, one of the challenges that we have to make in Solar Simplified, and also us as an industry have to, start spreading the word. This is a highly regulated product. We have state regulators, we have federal regulators. There's really no way, even technically, I cannot charge you extra in many of these states. Many of the states, I'm literally unable to click those buttons. I have to set up a discount of some sort. And so it's a lot of customer education, lots of customer engagement, different communities throughout the country to show them, hey, this is a real thing. You should give it a shot. You're going to save a whole lot of money. And I can give you just a specific example from this morning with a customer that reached out here in Southern Illinois. I live in Chicago, so Northern Illinois, but with a customer that lives outside of St. Louis, but on the Illinois side, who reached out to ask a bunch of questions. And I saw the emails going back and forth between him and my team. He's been saving over $100 a month because in Southern Illinois, it's a 50% discount. So 50. Not like most markets are 10 to 20% discount. But in Illinois, the economics is just so wide that these power plant companies that we work with, they're saying, hey, here's 50, 60, 70% discount sometimes.
Why are they offering
because they can. It's just the margin there that they're making is so big. They're saying, let's just give out 50% because it's still super economical for them.
So then on their bill, so their electric bill is still with the normal utility company.
Correct.
But the utility utility company is working in tandem with the actual solar farm. Yeah. Oh, directly with. So I
would say with me and physically connected to that solar power plant.
Gotcha.
And so the utility, what we figured out how to do is to get the utility to put that coupon on your bill. And so what you will see, for example, if that subscriber that's called this morning, what he sees, and again, the number fluctuates because it depends on the weather. But on average, he saw that his bill was, I don't even remember what the number was, call it $200 a month. We paid $100 on his behalf. That was the discount. And he owes the utility company the other $100, for example.
Gotcha. Now, in terms of the subscription, how do you set the subscription price for a service like this? Because, is it market to market? Does it depend on, if you're in Illinois, your subscription is going to be different than if you're in, Wichita, Kansas?
Yeah, great question. There's actually no price on the subscription. The only thing that we ask of you is to pay us, call it the opposite of the discount. So let's take a simpler example, just with round numbers. Let's say we generate $100 on your behalf, and it's a 10% discount, just to make it simple. That means that you saved $10, and your subscription fee will be $90, right? We gave you $100 worth of value, and we ask for $90 back. In most utilities around the country, we've figured out a way to close the loop on that. And basically, it's all going to be on your bill and on your utility bill. And you're going to just be able to save $10, just net. You see, minus 100 plus 90,
All the
Net
math,
discount 10. All the
all the
math is
math
behind the
is
scenes.
done. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right, it's
Okay.
done behind the scenes. I would say, unfortunately, there's still some states and some utilities that are not playing ball with that structure. And in
Yeah.
those types of places we literally are going to pay $100 off of your bill, and we're going to ask you to pay us back Solar Simplified directly, not through the utility, but directly to us, the $90 back.
Okay.
And so, but we're as time passes, we're able to get more and more utilities in other states, to support the let's do the math behind the scenes and just save the time and make this simple for the consumer.
Yeah, of
Uh,
course. Because
so
the other
so
thing
yeah,
is you would want the consumer, the customer to, if they have to do math in the background, or they see
right.
that, you're
No, it's
you're
much more
making,
complicated.
it's 100% much more complicated. Are
Right.
you, in terms of like, okay, when you first started, you said 4 years ago, was your mindset, okay, we're gonna go into a specific market, we're going to focus on that market and see if there's proof of concept here? What was that like, that go to market strategy when you first founded Solar Simplified?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say we kind of started the company from a slightly different angle that I would say most entrepreneurs don't necessarily, at least the ones that I know, and stumble into, don't necessarily start that way. Um, we learned of the problem basically by stumbling into it. I just got introduced through the various means of communication in the ether. There were a lot of startups back in early days of COVID that did professional network, kind of almost like speed dating, but professionally on Zoom. Where you just sign up for a time and you give like 5 or 10 different topics of interest, and they just matched you with a random person, um,
That's
just to
cool.
talk about at the same time. Yeah,
Yeah.
I probably did. This is after I sold my previous company, back in the end of 2019. And so I was, jobless, basically for a couple of months. We took a vacation, my family and I. But, once COVID started around the world, you don't really want to keep traveling. And so came back to Chicago, and I didn't have anything to do. I did not join the acquiring company on the last exit. It was a real estate company, not a tech company. We did real estate revenue management software. Um, and we can get back to that later if you want. But I didn't join the acquiring company because they weren't in tech, and so there wasn't
Yeah.
much of an interest for me. It was more buying for self-use and buying for to block their competitors from using our software. And so I didn't join them, and I started making those calls. And I want to say over probably about 6 months period, I probably did about 500 of these types of calls, which sounds like a lot, but think about like 2 or 3 half-hour calls a day, 5 days a week. And when you don't have a job, it's really not that big of a deal. It's a good way of passing the time because I got tired very quickly from, watching Netflix and YouTube and stuff of that nature. I needed to do
You
something
got
else with my
bored.
time. Yeah. And so, I stumbled into these people, I want to say about 5 or 6 calls from 500 were those companies that built these solar power projects, solar power plants. Um, Again, on very large rooftops or ground mount, and they want to sell to subscribers, but they don't know how. They don't really have the systems. It's not their core competence to build tech platforms, their core competence to find the spot, get the permits, and build the thing. It's not marketing and billing and APIs and connectivity and collections and all of that type of stuff. Um, and so many of them were complaining that there's just no good solution out there. There were some solutions, and I do have competition, and I had competition when I started, but it was very different. Pricing structure, it was for the power plants, I mean, it was very different. Timelines and guarantees and kind of what the service and what the product actually includes in terms of features and stuff of that nature. And so, to me, coming in from having 2 online advertising companies and a real estate revenue management company, which kind of talks a lot about billing and collections and how do you move and APIs around moving money around and things of that nature, it's kind of like, let's just combine all of those things into one and redo it in this very specific niche. And so the concept wasn't, let's start in in Illinois or in New York or in this place or in that place and test it out. It was more about opportunistically, we know these five or six particular companies that, again, we stumbled into and I stumbled into. Let's just go back to them with a product that they need and
Yeah.
see where they want to take us. And so they took us at the early days. It was mostly New York State. Kind of started upstate. One customer was very heavy around Buffalo. A different one was very heavy around Albany. And so we kind of started with them and spread around New York State. And then just one of them said, "Oh, I have a bunch of solar projects that are coming online, or I want to start building in Illinois. Can you guys do Illinois?" So for me, it's kind of the same stuff. I mean, the utility company's different, but the
Yeah.
platform, get the subscribers, figure out how to allocate them for the utility, which is a new challenge every time there's a new utility. But the marketing of savings through solar energy to subscribers is roughly the same marketing. You still have to A/B test messaging and stuff, but it's selling the same stuff to consumers. And on the flip side, billing and everything around behind the scenes is also the same. So it's just figuring out the utilities, technologies, and what can they support and what they cannot support. So a bunch of APIs you have to redo. But once you
Yeah.
do that, you're done. Like you're operating within that utility territory. And so, what we've started, let's say, in the last, call it 2 years, since we've seen the expansion of this, is to try to preemptively build the APIs with the utilities we think people are getting into. Already build those so that by the time our power plant customers, the developers, the asset owners of those projects,
Plug and
by the
play.
time they moved into Maryland or Delaware or DC or Oregon or whatever, we already have the APIs and the connectivity built in, and we're kind of ready to go once they need us to be ready.
Wow. Yeah, and you have a fixed number of utility companies, so you know who you have to have the APIs with for any
Right.
markets that you're in.
100%. And it's not a big number, by the way. I mean, here in Illinois,
No.
there's two utility companies.
Yeah.
In DC, you only have one. I think the largest market, is New York. They have 7.
Mm.
But 2 are owned by another 2, so net it's 5. Which is,
Yeah.
I think, not the largest market, but the largest in terms of how many utilities they have. And most states have, call it 2 to 4 on average. So it's really not that big of an uplift, to do this. And there's obviously cross references between different states. I mean, like ComEd, which is the utility here in Chicago, is owned by Exelon.
Mm.
Exelon owns, I want to say, I think it's like 6, 7, or 8 different utility companies throughout the country. So
Mm.
the API I'm building with ComEd is roughly the same API as the one I'm building in. I think they own the DC utility and Maryland or Delaware utilities and a bunch of others. The APIs, they're not perfectly the same, but they're very close because it's all owned by the same company. So it's kind of very
Right.
structured. Um, so you can get to scale very fast with these APIs. That's not the challenge of what we're doing.
It's getting those subscribers, which I wanna touch upon. So,
Yeah, power
um,
plants on one side, subscribers on the other side.
yeah. So you're talking. Now that we have an idea of what you're doing currently, I want to step back and talk about the stepping stones that have been made. So you talked about how, in your previous companies, online advertising, a lot of the skill sets that you did in previous companies, you're applying to a problem that you saw in the market now based on your, 500 speed dating sessions with other companies that are facing their own problems. So, what take me back and talk about how you built that skill set in these, I guess, in the advertising space, and how that has really paved the way for what Solar Simplified is today.
Sure. Um, I mean, also, I think when we started the first startup, and this is over 10 years ago now, um, the I would say like the underlying thread amongst all of my startups is like your team, wrote in the intro, kind of data analytics and machine learning. It's how
Yeah.
can we use data to make decisions better, faster, cheaper, on behalf of a client somewhere. And so those first two startups basically had the same kind of concept in mind. It is what data can we gather, that is publicly available. So we're not hacking your computer or your phone or anything. It's just like public stuff you put out in the ether.
Yeah.
And what can we learn from that to figure out, are you relevant for campaign A or B or C or maybe none of them at all? And it's I'm not going to dive too deep into the algorithms, but it very much looks like, or used to look like, the what today is known as the Facebook's lookalike audience algorithm.
Yeah.
So from the data that we have on you, do you look more like this group or that group? And which campaigns worked on already in the past on this group versus which campaigns worked on that group? And so you try to basically group people together who look like each other, not physically but behaviorally. It's almost like
You see patterns in the
profiling.
data.
Yeah, it's almost like profiling of behavior. It's not we didn't do demographics data because
Mm.
nobody cares. Like, some advertisers might care about your demographics, but most advertisers care about your behavior, what you like, what you don't like, what you want to
Mm.
spend money on, what you don't want to spend money on, things of that nature. And it's kind of like profiling. If you used to watch CSI on television, or Profiler back in, I think, like
Yeah.
Profilers back in the 90s, I think, or early 2000s, and it's like all of these detective type of TV shows. It's kind of the same concept, but in advertising instead of like criminal law. um it's, let's figure out what do you like, what do you don't like, what do you engage in, what you're not engaged in, etc. And based on that, infer, maybe you like this campaign better than that campaign. Let's show you an ad and see, are you going to click it, you're going to
Yeah.
download something, you're going to sign up for something, you're going to buy something, etc. So that's what we did in the first two companies, basically. And our clientele used to be, and I haven't been involved, so I don't know what their current clientele is, but by the time I left in 2016, we had Netflix and Hulu and Facebook and Spotify, and a lot of the big brands that are out there, and gaming companies, King.com with the Candy Crush kind of series, and the Angry Birds series with Rovio, etc., etc. So lots of different campaigns from different angles, which also in return gets us more data about what different people like and what different people don't
Yeah.
like. Um, what we've done here in Solar Simplified is, again, use the same concept. It's not necessarily the same algorithms because we don't have a billion products to sell to you. We only have
No.
one. But it's still the concept of, do you care about climate change? Do you care about solar or green energy in general? Maybe you don't. Maybe you care about money and about saving money. As long as you're not anti-solar completely, you're still going to sign up. And
Yeah.
so now it's just different messaging of what speaks to different people.
Because
Some
you can
people
have.
really care about creating more jobs locally.
Yeah.
And so they sign up not even for the discounts. They sign up because they want more of these power plants to get built in their area where they live. And companies would do that if they see that there's a lot of subscribers that want more of this. So they will go and say, oh, okay, subscription is going to be easy. The B2C side is going to be easy for Aviv to do, for Solar Simplified to do. Okay, let's try to figure out if there's other, commercial rooftops or other pieces of land that are not getting utilized by anybody. Let's put it there.
Right. Well, so your messaging really it differs based on the customer. So I'm just thinking to myself, there are folks out there that not complaining, but they're talking about online how inflation has everything, the cost of everything has gone up, my electricity has gone up. That right there is an ICP
Signal.
for you.
Yeah,
Signal.
that's a
But then
signal. That's a
you got
signal
the
that person might be interested in saving some money.
so the question in terms of client acquisition, when you go into a specific market, the nice thing is, you can focus in your advertising to where around the that solar plant is, or the utility company that you're working with. How are you approaching advertising? And is this from a paid advertising side? Are you going like, is it down to the community level where you're going to community events to talk about Solar Simplified? What has been your approach thus far? Has it been
Yeah, I mean,
partnerships working with the utility
right.
companies directly?
So I would say we have to partner with the utility companies because again we have to put this on your bill, but the customer
Yeah,
acquisition is not done through the utility. The utility is kind of like the third party we have to work with in order to make
yeah,
this simple for you.
yeah,
Um, a lot of our engagement is split. I would say it's split to two. Um, and you kind of touched on both aspects. A lot of it is online advertising. We don't do door-to-door sales because I don't want anybody knocking on my door. And we
yeah,
don't cold call people because I don't want anybody cold calling me. And so I
yeah,
don't like to do to other people what I don't want people to do to me. So a lot is online advertising. Um, it's not a lot of SEO and SEM, to be honest with you, because people don't know to search for this. This is such a new niche,
you need to show
in the
their
market.
problem. You need to show that
Exactly.
they have
It
the
has to be
problem.
outbound.
Yeah,
Right. Right. Exactly. It has to be outbound. We have to show them a photo or an image with a text or a video with a text or something that will draw their attention to look into this, to read this, to see a video, to do something. It's not something that is searchable. Very few people search for this. Um, so that's kind of one aspect. The other aspect, and you touched on it, community engagement. We do a lot of local partnerships with what I call micro influencers, but it's not the Kim Kardashians of the world. It's not huge celebrities, on their Instagram. We don't do this on Instagram. We actually do this, you know, call it on the ground. It could be your pastor or your rabbi if you're a religious person, your imam. It could be a local business owner, maybe a coffee shop where people get together and they talk about a bunch of stuff, and it's like a locally owned, so everybody knows the owner or the manager. Um, could be a local nonprofit. I mean, almost every state out there, has those local nonprofits try to help people save some money or budgeting or finance in
yeah,
general, kind of financial education, things of that nature. It could be local politicians. Some states, some places have neighborhood HOAs. So maybe it's your neighborhood HOA,
yeah,
that can tell you about this. And we kind of take the time to explain everything super in depth with those types of influencers so they would understand what it is. We don't pay them anything though. So this is not paid advertising in that sense. We sometimes donate money to a local charity on their behalf, but that's kind of a fixed amount pre-agreed. It's not like every person you bring over, I'm going to pay you X dollars, because that to me loses some of the trust and the credibility of the influencer. And since again, this is such a new industry, new niche, I don't want to taint that type of messaging with consumers thinking to themselves, is he getting paid to say that? Like those people don't get paid a dime.
yeah,
Most people subscribe so they get the savings, just like you would
yeah.
get the savings if you subscribe as their neighbor. But there's no kind of there's no payment behind the scenes that I'm telling them, hey, I'm going to pay you XYZ dollars in order for you to go get me some customers. Because again, that loses the credibility and the trust. And for me, trust is super important
Of course.
because if we had trust with the consumer side of the business, I would have I would have millions of people knocking on my door asking to sign up for this.
Yeah,
The reason we don't is that the trust is not there because this product didn't exist until a couple of years ago.
yeah.
So we have to start building that trust with consumers, in order to show them, yeah, people are saving money. I mean, and I haven't looked recently, but I believe we've already passed $1 million in savings to our
Nice.
subscriber base in the last couple of years. Now, it did take us time to ramp up to that,
Yeah,
but that's huge. Like, think about it. That's a whole lot of money that households did not need to pay their utility companies. and
Yeah.
instead they just save that money.
Oh, I can,
That's a lot.
especially,
That's a lot.
especially you've entered a time period where now more than ever is the constraints of families financially. Really, they're looking at where we cut costs, and something like this is the cost of energy has only gone up,
Right?
and for them, a solution like this offers them at least some discount here, some discount there. It makes a big difference to them. What
A
I,
hundred
I
percent, 100%. Think about it this way. Like the way I'm looking at it, I think the average household would probably save around, call it about $10 a month. Some
yeah,
households will like the bigger your bill is, the more we can help you save, obviously. But let's say, if it's $10 a month, that's $120 a year that you did not need to pay that utility company.
yeah,
That's whatever, 2 3 more movie sessions with your spouse and your kids and popcorn and everything.
yeah.
It's a couple times a year. It's you know it's a going out with your family somewhere. You're not going to be a millionaire from these savings, you know
What do you
but
think?
it adds up, with
Yeah,
inflation, especially since 2020, with the lockdowns and supply chain issues and everything. Inflation has skyrocketed for everybody, you know, and so this is our small way of helping people kind of fight that inflation a little bit and saving some money in the process.
I'm sure there's also, I'm thinking of small businesses as well, like that are in this
Yeah,
position. I mean, I live in New York City. I work
you should sign
at,
up.
dude, you have no idea.
Mind blown.
The summertime is insane here in terms of my utility bill.
Yeah,
I have an investment property in Harlem, and it was like June this year. The bill was $850. Now, granted,
wow,
it's a big house,
but
but
still,
it's yeah, that's it's a lot.
that's huge. So if you could have
It's
saved, call it 85 of the 850, 10%,
yeah,
that's a decent amount of money.
yeah, yeah.
So
And but the application I'm thinking about is also from there's the B2C route, but there's also a huge B2B route here. There are tons of, I'm just thinking of all of my colleagues and associates in the real estate space. You were in the real estate industry. Landlords, one of the biggest complaints that landlords have is their utility bill. Um, I just had one of my uh, a building that I lived in that I used to manage, the landlord went in, changed every light bulb in the building, like just because the incremental savings across a portfolio of 100 buildings adds up significantly.
right.
Have you guys also explored that route in terms of growth?
I mean, if you're thinking of it in terms of the consumers, of the subscribers, then yes,
Yeah,
about 30% of our portfolio of subscribers is small businesses.
good. Okay.
Um, I kind of shy away personally from an ethical reason. From call it the Fortune 500 companies, they don't need these savings.
No.
Um, it's not going to move their needle. But I would say we have kind of 30%, which is thousands of subscribers, who are mom and pop shops, the local grocery store, the local gas station, a store for selling goods and like goods of all sorts of stuff. With some folks who sign up their office because they're an insurance broker.
Yeah.
Just have a desk and a bunch of light bulbs and a laptop and a bunch of screens, but it's not something super heavy. So yeah, we have a decent number of subscribers that are kind of called small to mid-sized businesses as well, for sure.
That's awesome. Tell
Yeah.
me, let's go into the nitty gritty of operating a business, scaling business. You've had so much success over the years. You've had a few exits. You've also guided other entrepreneurs, as an advisor. What are the biggest pitfalls that startup founders face, in the early days of starting a company that maybe you've experienced yourself? and that you now, advise other entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Um, it's funny. I just saw statistics that prove what I've always thought about. And I'll see if I can find the screenshot. I'll send it to you later. Maybe you can tag it on the video. Um, it's building a company or building a product or a service that nobody needs. A lot of entrepreneurs, especially where I come from Tel Aviv, but also kind of Silicon Valley, um, have the mindset or come in with the mindset of, I have this really cool idea. Let's build it, and then we'll figure out who's going to buy it because it's super cool. And I would have bought it had I been in their shoes. So I'm sure some people are going to buy it from me. And it's the lack of kind of product market fit because there's a product that nobody needs or a service that nobody needs. And it's funny because a friend of mine works in VC. It just sent me, I think on Monday of this week, a couple of days ago, a screenshot that they've surveyed, what is it, like the top 500 VCs, I think, in the United States on the reasons why their startup portfolios have failed in the past. And I want to say it's like top 10 reasons, something of that nature. And the number one reason by far was they were trying to sell something that nobody wanted to buy.
But yeah,
And so my best recommendation is to flip it on its head and don't start to build anything whatsoever. Kind of do the thing that I stumbled into, in retrospect, which was very good for me, but go do the market research. Go talk to your customers. If it's B2B, my personal advice, you need to find, at least a dozen companies of decent size that this would add value to. And the reason I say decent size, it's not a matter of how many employees, is how much value is this going to give them? Because if this is a company, B2B business, the value brought is worth $100, it's not worthwhile.
yeah,
But if it's 100,000 or maybe even $10,000 a year that you've just provided value, well, you can take half of that, let's say. And maybe there's more companies. Like if you found a dozen companies, there's probably at least a dozen more like them, or maybe 10 dozen more like them out there. But if you found only one or two, statistically, it could be an edge case and just nobody else is interested. If you think of consumers, it still goes back to customer development, customer interviews. If you're selling something B2C, you need to survey hundreds of people because, maybe you like it and your family likes it, but nobody else in the world is going to like it. So you need to make sure that the market wants this, in my opinion, before you even start to do real in-depth development. And kind of one thing that I've been hearing a lot of folks, kind of like Gary Vee, and Alex Hormozy, and some of like the gurus on B2C kind of sales and marketing say, just put up a landing page. Throw $5, $10 into a Facebook campaign, Instagram campaign, Google campaign, something. A very small number of money. Drive
waiting
traffic to the
list.
landing page, and there's nothing behind the landing page.
It's just a waiting
just,
list.
Right. It's a waiting list, or it's a sign-up flow of some sort,
Yeah,
and just see if there's interest or not. Because if there's no interest, don't go out. Take your time. Maybe take your money. Try to raise money from investors. Maybe somebody's going to give you some money. But if the market is just not there, you're just spending money and time in vain. And so
yeah.
that'll be my best recommendation.
How has your approach to marketing changed since your first startup? In terms of go to market and um, advertising? Has your philosophy in growing the business changed from the first to now what is Solar Simplified?
Um,
Or are you just rinse and repeating these startups in and out?
it's I would say it's rinse and repeat, but the challengers are different. Um, because I'm one of those entrepreneurs that VCs don't necessarily like, because even though I'm a serial entrepreneur, I switch industries. And so like the perfect, like the holy grail for VCs is to have an entrepreneur who has done it already in the same market. already knows everybody, has the connections, understands sales cycles and marketing channels and everything like that, then it's just rinse and repeat. For me, it's rinse and repeat, but because I choose to switch industries for my benefit, because I find that's how I make my life interesting, it's a little bit tougher because sales cycles in advertising don't look anything like sales cycles in real estate, which doesn't look anything like sales cycles in marketing channels and etc. etc. Pricing structures, business models, etc. versus the solar industry and power plants. So some things are the same, some things are different. That's what makes it interesting, in my opinion. But you're gonna have to learn from your mistakes in the past and then just stumble into new mistakes and try to overcome them. I think that what the good thing that I brought or I kind of learned on myself is kind of just how to get used to the ups and downs, kind of the roller coaster mentally, and kind of how to get through that. Because I know that it's going to get better if I set my mind to it and I try harder, and it's not just necessarily about banging your head against the wall, but try harder, smarter. It's A/B test how you're banging your head against the wall, and if A is not working, try B. If B is not working, try C. Kind of change your pitch, change the pricing structure, change the business model. Like just A/B test everything you can A/B test until you figure out, okay, this is what my customers want. That's one option. The other option, going back to your previous question, just ask people. Don't pitch. Like the way that I advise some of my early stage founders that come to me, whether it's like people reaching out on LinkedIn or through my network, kind of second degree, third degree connections, I just recommend don't pitch anything. Go to customer interviews. Don't talk about yourself. Just ask them questions that are relevant, might give you relevant information.
Yeah.
And maybe the information is going to steer you away from what you were thinking of doing into a completely different direction. And maybe you'll decide to do that pivot. And maybe not. That's totally okay. But people will give you information because, just like me here today, people like to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
And, and it's the same, even if it's not a podcast, just a one-on-one conversation. People like to talk and people like to share, assuming they don't think you're going to try to shove something down their throat.
Yeah.
Because if they think that, kind of block off and not want to talk to you about anything because they're thinking that there's a scam here. I'm going to try to, again, shove something down their throat or stuff of that nature.
It's interesting you say that. So what I've seen a development at our company at Delegate, we have some venture-backed startups that come to us that need cold callers. But what I've seen is like a shift where they have went from, hey, we need cold callers to do active sales for our company, to we need data enrichment agents to just call people and, to your point, ask questions. And what they're trying to do is really, and these are, they're very early stage companies that are trying to see whether their product aligns with the demand in the market. And all they need is to call these potential clients and say, hey, this is what we're developing. We're framing this idea around this problem. I want to talk to you about your problems. They're not even selling anything. And it's a lot easier to gather information, and surprisingly, you have a lot more people that are willing to speak to you when you're just literally surveying.
100%. And yeah, if people don't have their shield up because they think you're going to sell them something, they're much more likely, both B2B and B2C, to give you some information and just be honest with their answers, which is important.
Cool. The last question I have for you as we wrap this up is, we often like to ask people on this podcast, what does delegation mean to you? And how has delegating changed the course of your business and your entrepreneurial journey?
That's a great question. If you want to scale, you have to bring a team. There are some businesses where, it's a one-person shop, whether it's a consulting business or something online. that's fairly small and limited, but there are some businesses you can scale to making good money if it's just one person thing. But at some point, you're going to get stuck in a ceiling. Your time is limited, your mind is limited, you have other things in your life, so if you want to scale stuff that are just beyond you, you have to bring other people to work with you, whether they're 1099s or W2s, employees, that doesn't actually matter, channel partners, etc. You're going to have to figure out how to surround yourself with more people around you. And that's a tough challenge, man. Like, to be honest with you, like, it's very tough to build something in your two bare hands and then to let go of small parts of it to different types of people. I personally, am very fond of hiring people, even though it's call it a little bit heavier on the company because it's payroll and it's benefits and it's 401k and, stuff of that nature. But I prefer to make sure that people are completely dedicated to what it is I want to do. And obviously there's an interview process and we, have to get to know each other. A lot of my questions are not necessarily the professional questions. Professional questions are kind of like a check the box. I need to know you have those skills. But a lot of what I do in the interview process, when I interview is just personal questions. I want to know who you are and to make sure you're a good fit for me and for the business and to make sure we're a good fit for you. Because I don't want the turnover. Because turnover means I'm going to have to hire somebody else. I'm going to have to spend money and time on re-interviewing people and, teaching a new person, how to do the job, etc. So I want to make sure that you're going to be here for the long haul. So it's tough mentally. And there's always more important stuff to do day to day than hiring a new person or training the new person you've just hired. But on the flip side, if you invest that first few days of actually training and hiring the right people, it pays itself, tenfold, if not 100-fold, because you've just taken a task that potentially you don't have to do. And you can focus your time on doing something more valuable. Sales, marketing, innovation, new products, whatever it is, new markets, stuff of that nature. And you can hire an assistant or a salesperson or a marketing person or an engineer, or there's like a billion different things that you don't necessarily have to do because they don't have the highest value that you could contribute to your own business. And so that's kind of what drives me to delegate. And so I kind of split it between things that I should not be doing but are very worthwhile for the business. Those are the ones that I delegate versus things that I don't want to do or I don't have to do and are not valuable to the business, just don't do them. If there's no value there, just skip it. There's limited amount of time in in our lives. I want to focus on what's highest value that I can bring. And if you can bring a higher value than I can bring, I'm just going to call you up and tell, hey, Blendi, join the team. We have better use for your talents here than for us to try to do what you would do better than us.
Awesome. And the other side of that is when you take that philosophy, a lot of times you apply it to your own life. So you start realizing that there's certain things that are not worth your time to do in your personal life, and you start delegating that out. There's a very well-known VC from Silicon Valley that said it. He said, I put a value on an hour of my time. And this is talking about outside of his, outside of the professional sphere. I put a value on an hour of my time, $1 amount. If the activity that I'm doing is I can hire someone for less than that dollar amount, I do it. If it's going to take me an hour to return a package to FedEx or Amazon, whatever it is, I'm just going to give away that package, donate it, or throw it out because it's not worth it. And so applying that in the professional space is one thing. Also applying it in your personal space, because at the end of the day, time, no matter what, we don't die with money. Time is the most valuable resource that we have.
Right. I mean, I very much agree with that, but I look at it slightly differently in that I don't like to put a value on my time because that's a very debatable number, you know. And I don't like to potentially lie to myself about what
Yeah.
that number might be. I just look at it from an opportunity cost. What could I do with the time that I'm going to be spending? Like, can I spend
Yeah.
it with my kids? Can I spend it with my wife or with my dog or with my family or with my friends or something? It doesn't have to be with business, but can I, you know, call it cut corners or outsource, mowing the lawn to somebody else, not just because my time is more valuable in terms of money, but because I could have better use for my
Yeah.
time because I could spend it with my kids.
Yeah. Higher valuable
100%.
tasks. Yeah, definitely. And in that sense, the inference there is that delegation also helps with peace of mind and balance in one's life. So,
100%.
Aviv,
All right.
really appreciate you coming onto the podcast. It was a pleasure speaking with you. I'd love to have you on again. I think we can talk for hours. So let's
A lot more to
let's
dive into,
hundred
but I would
percent.
love that. I
Let's
appreciate you
touch
having me, and
base.
thank you to you and for the team, for inviting me over. And I would love to do another one, in a couple of months.
And now I'm gonna email you and ask you, how do I get signed up with Solar Simplified?
SolarSimplified.com.
Okay,
Super simple,
fantastic.
takes about 2 minutes.
Awesome, awesome. And where can people find you online? Just to kind
Probably
of
LinkedIn. LinkedIn would
LinkedIn.
probably be best. Yes. I also have avivshalgi.com. It just redirects to my LinkedIn right now. But
Fantastic.
LinkedIn, Aviv Shalgi in Chicago. There's only one of me here.
Okay,
And people can happily reach out. Don't sell me anything, but happily reach out. I'm happy to be helpful.
beautiful. Love that. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on another episode of the Sip and Scale podcast. Bye.